Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to deconstruct a really fascinating short fable known as Clever Fish. Now, on the surface, this just reads like your classic run-of-the-mill children's story, right? But when we actually take a closer look, it's a completely brilliant case study. We're going to explore exactly how a tiny, seemingly helpless creature uses the complex psychology of negotiation and human greed to absolutely outwit a massive, powerful adversary. We'll break down the exact tactics used in the story so we can see what it practically teaches us about leverage, survival, and the very real dangers of unchecked expectations in our own lives. So here's the core question that drives the entire narrative. How on earth can one tiny fish outsmart a hungry fisherman? As we go through this, I really want you to put yourself in the shoes of both of these characters. We're setting the stage for the ultimate, timeless battle of brawn versus brain. On one side, you've got overwhelming physical dominance and a crystal clear objective. And on the other, absolute vulnerability, where literally the only weapon available is intellect and quick thinking. So how does the weaker party not just survive the encounter, but completely flip the script on their captor? Well, let's start by establishing the baseline of our primary antagonist here, the fisherman. His daily routine is totally predictable. He goes out to a river, tosses his heavy net into the water, and he just sits there, waiting. His motivation is single-minded and perfectly clear. He is driven entirely by the simple, unwavering expectation of catching enough fish to sell at the local market so he can make some good money. This underlying financial motivation, this desperate need for more, is his glaring weak point. And spoiler alert, it's the exact psychological lever the fish is going to pull to secure its freedom. After waiting around for quite some time, the fisherman finally feels a heavy pull. Now, the original source text describes this exact moment in a wonderfully quirky way. It says he hooked relevant basil in the net. Yeah, the phrasing is a little unusual, maybe even a bit funny, but the meaning is incredibly clear in the context of the story. He feels a substantial weight, real resistance. The trap has been sprung, and in his mind, the boring wait is finally over. He is absolutely convinced that this heavy pull means he's secured the massive lucrative haul he desperately needs. He enthusiastically yanks that net out of the water, probably already counting his profits in his head, right? But instead of a massive, overflowing haul, he finds exactly one. One tiny little fish. Just one. Talk about a massive subversion of expectations. The fisherman is immediately and deeply disappointed. Just think about that psychological drop for a second. He went from dreaming of a bustling market stall full of premium inventory to staring down at a single, almost completely worthless catch. The real tension in the story kicks off right here, living in that huge gap between what he expected to get and the reality of what he actually got. Now, what's super fascinating here is the sheer desperation of the prey. The tiny fish immediately realizes the mortal danger it's in, and it just starts frantically begging for its life, crying out, "Oh, fisherman, please, 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 leave me." It's a completely emotional appeal, based entirely on mercy and compassion. But the fisherman, oh, he ignores this initial request completely, doesn't even give it a second thought. You see, to him, this isn't a conversation, it's just a highly disappointing piece of inventory. Empathy simply has no place in his business model when his eyes are glued to the prize. And here is where the absolute genius of the story reveals itself. The fish recognizes instantly that the emotional appeal has completely failed, but it doesn't keep crying, it doesn't panic further. Instead, it executes this brilliant, calculated pivot. It realizes that appealing to mercy won't work on someone motivated solely by money, so it shifts entirely to a business proposition. It drops the helpless victim act and immediately starts acting like a high-stakes broker. This incredible mental agility is the absolute key to survival when you are hopelessly outmatched physically. You literally have to change the rules of the game. Think about this pitch because it brilliantly illustrates the true art of negotiation. The fish lays out a highly structured three-step proposal. First, it boldly states its demand, "Leave me back in the water." Second, it offers a compelling value proposition. "I will tell all my friends about you." Third, it provides a concrete, albeit highly suspicious, action plan, promising to bring them all to the bank coffee first for a massive, guaranteed catch the very next time the fisherman returns. The fish has successfully identified the fisherman's true underlying desire, which is more fish, meaning more money, and has masterfully weaponized that very desire against him. The bait is officially set, and the fisherman bites perfectly. He hears this incredibly bold pitch and literally thinks to himself, "Wow, that is not bad." He is instantly triggered by his own inherent greed. He actually stops and pauses to weigh this tempting offer. It's crazy because he completely forgets that he's talking to a fish he just tried to kill mere seconds ago. The intoxicating promise of immense future wealth has just entirely overridden his common sense, his logic, and all of his critical thinking skills. So the crucial takeaway here is this specific mental trade-off. The fisherman willingly sacrifices the absolute certainty of his one tiny catch today for the grand, entirely unverified illusion of endless fish tomorrow. It's a classic fatal error in risk assessment, and it is driven completely by greed. He's willingly trading a concrete reality in his hand for a wild fantasy floating out in the river. I mean, the fish has offered absolutely zero proof that it can actually deliver on this massive promise. But because the promise aligns so perfectly with what the fisherman already desperately wants to believe, he accepts it without a single question. Driven by this pure, unadulterated expectation of future wealth, the fisherman makes his deeply foolish choice. He opens his net and casually lets his tiny, extremely valuable captive go free into the river. The fish's strategy worked flawlessly. It managed to talk its way out of a completely inescapable, lethal trap simply by understanding the core psychology of its captor better than the captor understood himself. It is a literal masterclass in situational awareness. Let's map out the timeline here because it really shows how incredible tension builds across this sequence of events. On the morning of day one, we have the sudden capture. By the afternoon, the masterful, deceptive deal is struck and the great escape is executed. This all leads us inevitably to the morning of day two, where the eager fisherman returns to the riverbank for his promised magnificent bounty. Following this progression, you can almost feel the guy's eager anticipation building as he walks back to the water, completely and utterly unaware that he has just been played by a creature a fraction of his size. The dissonance here is just striking, isn't it? He arrives at the river with the absolute, rock-solid expectation that tomorrow I will get a lot of fish. But the reality, as the source text bluntly puts it, is that the clever fish is never to come back. The story then pauses for just a second to note his bleak new status. Poor fisherman. He's left standing alone by the river with an empty net, having foolishly lost both the actual fish he had and the imaginary fortune he had built up in his head. His own unmanaged greed was literally the sole architect of his downfall. Ultimately, the source text anchors its entire moral on a very precise definition of cleverness. It defines cleverness not as book smarts or academic intelligence, but as the raw, practical ability to save your own life from a challenging moment. The story brilliantly demonstrates how mental agility, rapid adaptability, and deep psychological insight are far, far superior to mere physical strength or dominance when your actual survival is on the line. It's really about knowing how to play the player, not just the game. As the original story charmingly concludes, the overarching lesson is abundantly clear. You must be really, really clever to save your life from what it delightfully calls a shark challenges moment. I just love that fantastic phrase. A shark challenges moment is any situation in life where you are facing overwhelming odds, a vastly superior opponent, or a potentially devastating outcome. In those critical moments, brute force simply won't work. You have to rely entirely on your intellect and your strategic ability to negotiate the circumstances to your advantage. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought to chew on based on everything we've broken down today. When you are inevitably backed into a corner by a powerful adversary, or when you find yourself staring down your very own shark challenges moment, how exactly will you negotiate your escape? Are you going to panic, freeze, and simply beg for mercy? Or will you pivot, carefully analyze your opponent's true motivations, and use your wits to turn the tide in your favor? The clever fish survived by thinking one critical step ahead, and perhaps, if we pay attention, we can all learn to do the exact same thing.